All right, how's it going, everybody? Just gonna tweet out that we are currently live. Hey, Kasparov, how's it going? Good to see you. Is there any particular stock you want me to cover before we really get going? How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the stream. How's it going, Jim? That's a good question. So first I'm going to talk about FCell, and then I'll get to you. Get your question, Jim. So let's look at FCell. Not super familiar with this stock. So just looking at the overall trend, I don't like seeing this. You can see it's an older company and it's been in a long-term downtrend. And definitely recently it's been recovering quite nicely, but still it's going to be trapped below all this overhead supply. And also it's only it only costs $2, which I have a restriction on myself that I only invest in stocks that are over $12, simply because mutual funds and hedge funds can't really pick up a big position in these type of stocks. And I want to be aligning my positions with all those mutual funds, hedge funds, because that's what really drives stocks upwards. Let's see. All right, Jim. So SPC. So yes, this was a really big winner last week, and I had been paying attention to it simply because it was running up so quickly in mid-January. And then I decided to watch it for a bit because it was advancing on really good volume. I've actually got that hidden here. But whenever a stock increases 14% on, let's see, 35 million shares compared to 5 million shares, that tells you something that hedge funds and mutual funds are picking up shares. And so those are the type of stocks that I want to focus on. And so I then drew in this this trend line here when it got knocked down and consolidated nicely. And then I actually set an alert in TC2000. And if you're not familiar with how to set alert, you can just right click on any line that you draw, do set alert, and then you can write in here whatever you want to pop up in your email or a text if you sign up for that. And then on that day, I saw that it was up 500% volume buzz, and that tells you it was ready to really break through. And then it had a bunch of follow-on days, which is exactly what I want to see. So does that answer your question? Do you want me to go more in depth in any aspect of that? Maxer, okay. Let's see. So Maxer, I think, is similar to FCell. I think, yeah, it's an older company. It dropped down a bunch, but I really like the volume pattern that's in right now. And it's got a little less overhead supply, and it's a more expensive stock, which I like. So overall, it's in a long-term, short-term uptrend since January of 2019. And on the daily, it's acting well with a bunch of big spikes. And these are signs of accumulation, like I said. So I think Maxer is definitely a better investment than FCell, but still I would be a little bit wary because it's nowhere near all-time highs. So it's got a lot of overhead supply holding it back. Let's see. CCS. Okay. So again, I'm not familiar with this company, so it looks like it's a newer company, which I like. It could be a potential green line breakout. Let's go to the monthly chart. Let's find the high, 36. And let's look at the daily. So it did have a green line breakout last week. And if you're not familiar with the green line breakout, it just means that it's a new all-time high that then rests for at least 3 months. And often stocks will just oscillate up and down under this line and not really go anywhere. And then you want to buy it when it closes above this green line. So right now it's consolidating nicely right above the green line. And I take that as really constructive. And this is good volume on the green line breakout. You want to see above average volume. So this is definitely one to watch. I don't really know anything about the fundamentals. So let's actually go to MarketSmith and check that out. And I see you guys' questions. I'll get to them in just a second. CCS. Okay, so good EPS rating, good RS rating, SMR is pretty good. Fundamental ratings look good. Good earnings growth this past quarter, up 35% earnings and sales. You got a cup and handle pattern here. So they draw in a more kind of intermediary green line. Well, actually, that might be the exact same one that we're talking about. But yeah, I think this is one to watch. It's got a constructive price pattern, good growth, and the estimates are also up for 2020 and 2021. So yeah, this looks pretty good. It wasn't a volume scan. It was actually I follow Brad Schultz on Twitter. Let's actually go to Twitter. I'll show you his handle. But every day he kind of posts stocks that are up at least 4% on above average volume. Let's go, Brad. Yeah. So each day, kind of midday, he posts a bunch of different, something like this, where he posts stocks that are up at least 4% on at least 1.5 average volume. And I saw SPC just keep popping up on this screen. So if you don't follow Brad, I highly recommend it. I get a lot of my ideas intraday from him. And he's also one of the people on my the list that I've created. So if you go to my profile and then go to my lists, you can actually subscribe to this list, which has my favorite people to get stock ideas from. So a lot of good ideas here, intraday, on the weekends, great charts and ideas. So yeah, that's how I kind of found out about it from Brad. Okay, so let's take a look at Square. So your question, Guest Gamer, and thanks for showing up to the stream. Your question is, what do you think about SQ over time? I think they can overtake Shopify. I don't really make judgments like that. I don't make my investments based on what I believe can happen. I don't know much about e-commerce at all, but I do play. I play this game based on the numbers and the chart patterns. And going to my fundamental list, SQ is actually number 22 at this time, and it's got some great EPS numbers, great EPS surprise, good return on equity. It's on the IBD 50 list. I think SQ is a great thing to look at. And let's take a look at the chart. It's not quite at all-time highs, but it's getting there. And it's consolidating nicely below this intermediary point of resistance. So it could be that once it breaks through this line, it could be a good buy. But I also think Shop is also a very good thing to look at. I think it also has, let's actually check where it is on my list. So Shop is number 57, SQ is number 22. In my mind, they're both good things to look at, both good companies. Yeah, my Twitter is at Richard Moglin. Guy just posted in there. Um, so Matt asks, what subscription level do you have for TC2000? I have the gold version, which allows you to write PCF codes and all that stuff, which I find really helpful. That's really part of my process. And Guy asks, what broker do I trade with? I trade with TD Ameritrade and also Vanguard for my IRA account. So before we get started, does anybody else have any stocks that you'd like me to take a look at just before we actually start my overall process? And Jim, I'm actually going to show right now quickly how I would build a scan like what Brad uses. So if you've got TC2000 up and running, you can follow along with me and just rewatch this if you don't have it with you at this moment. So this is my normal yellow band scan. So let's actually X out of that, except for the price condition. So what you'd want to do is write a new formula, and this will be the volume condition, and you want current V for volume to be greater than the average V with a 50 period average times 1.5. So this requires all stocks to have had their latest volume, so the current volume, to be greater than the average 50 volume times 150%. So that is one condition. And then for price, you just do C divided by the close of yesterday greater than 1.04. So basically you need at least a 4% increase. I'm not sure why it's giving me an error here. But yeah, something similar to this. And if you have troubles, either shoot me an email and I can make it for you if you want. All right. So let's get rid of that. Yellow bands. And this is C. And stochastic. I want less than 80. There we go. Okay. Oh, no parentheses. I think I did need parentheses for that, but I can build something similar pretty quickly. So if you guys are ready, we'll go ahead and get started. I've kind of shown my process in my other live streams, but if you have any questions along the way, just leave a comment in the chat and I'll be happy to answer it and pause and kind of explain my methodology and why I'm doing this. Let me just get a drink of water. All right, so the first thing I do is I go over to my fundamental lists and I take the top 400 names from this Excel file. Then I go over here and I've made a watch list that is the top 400, and let me actually rename this, and this is 2/16, right? Yep, February 16th. And then you just paste this in here. And I've got this scan activated. Oops, here we go. And I activate this scan, which basically makes sure that the price is over 12. That's the current trend is a yellow band trend, and that the stochastic is less than 80. And this one is to make sure I'm investing in expensive enough stocks that mutual funds and hedge funds could be accumulating shares. The second one is to make sure it's in an overall uptrend, because I only want to invest in stocks that are actually moving up, both in the long term and short term. And then the last one is to prevent entering extended and buying a stock after it's already moved up quite a bit in a short amount of time. So after we apply this scan, we are left with only 59 names out of 400. And actually, before I enter the scan, let me unflag everything that I have flagged, and I'll use the flagged indicator to kind of pick stocks that I'm interested in. So Cerny asks, how have I built the Excel spreadsheet? Well, let me show you. So let's go to MarketSmith, and let's see. It's glitched a little bit right now. There we go. Okay. So in MarketSmith, I've made a list. And let's move this up. I've made a personal watch list that basically has every stock in their database. And then what I've done is I've gone here, and let's wait for this to load. So if you go over here, it's being slow. I don't know. The school Wi-Fi in my apartment building is pretty bad. I think we're really far from the router or something like that. All right, it's taking forever, but I'll just explain it. So I go over here and go to the column sort option here, and I basically added all these different criteria down here that then I can use the export to Excel option here to basically create a database with all this different information here. And then what I've gone through is I've added these columns at the beginning that basically look for certain thresholds in this data here. And if they're satisfactory, I'll give 1 point, 2 point, basically. So if the earnings last quarter were up 40%, I'll give 1 point and add that to the total score. So using different things like that, I've gone ahead and created this kind of composite score that I call the RM score. And then I sort all the different stocks by that, and hopefully the best stocks come up to the top. And I found that really the top 400 is where I find the best ideas, the best looking charts, the best fundamentals to go along with my strategy. So I did tweet out this most recent list, and I'll actually link that below in the chat just so you guys have it. Let's see, here we go. Copy link, and there you go. So that should be a link to the most recent spreadsheet without kind of my algorithms over here. So yeah, I tend to focus on the top 400, and really the top 50 is where I'll go to again and again. Yeah, no problem. And make sure you guys leave a like down below on the stream. It just helps it get the word out there, and so YouTube knows to spread this video and that you guys are enjoying it. So thank you guys so much for showing up, and let's keep on going. So now that I've gotten all my top 400 in here and run the scan, I'll go through and sort by the stochastic, go from bottom to top, and look for stocks that meet the setups that I look for. And I've got 5 main setups that I look for: a Bollinger Band bounce, a green dot bounce, a cup and handle pattern, a breakout above a recent resistance level, and the last one is a 10-week bounce. So I'll go through mostly through the daily charts and look for a possible green dot bounce or a Bollinger Band bounce. So the first thing I look at with any of these stocks is if it's tight on this right hand side, and then I go to a monthly chart and quickly look at how it's performed during its lifetime. And you can see that NEM really hasn't gone anywhere, and it's also an older company. So that means there's less room for growth. And this isn't always the case because AMD as well is an older company. But you can see recently it's really been performing well. So NEM doesn't quite have the same growth as AMD, and this is actually probably reflected in the earnings and sales growth. So even though it's looking nice on the daily charts, it's not above its past green line, and I won't really consider it. So PRGS, looking at its monthly chart, you can see it's just been in constant growth since the 90s. So even though it's an older company, it is doing quite well recently. So on the daily chart, I like seeing all this accumulation here, but it is kind of falling back to its 30-day moving average here. So this could be a possible bounce. But it is still below this level here, so I don't think I'm going to consider this one. So Paycom dropped down, I believe, on earnings, but it's recovering nicely. And what I would like to see is either it did have a green dot bounce on this Thursday, so that was a possible entry point. But what I'd really like for it to do is really break through this 342 level. So a guy asked a good question. Why am I not filtering stocks with close earnings announcements? So that is my last step that I do. And even if a stock has a close earnings announcement, if its chart pattern looks good, that tells you something about the company. And even though I won't invest in it this week, I do want to keep it on my radar because if it has a good earnings report, it could break out, and then I would want to buy it. So that's a very good question, and obviously for your own system, you could do that, but this is just kind of how I do it. So we're going to add Paycom to our watch list because it did have a potential green dot buy here. So I like this long base that MANT is in. And it's got a lot of big up weeks recently, which is a sign of accumulation. So we're going to keep that on our radar. I've really improved my system over the past year or so, but yeah, probably about the last year is when I really narrowed this down and found all the good tools to use MarketSmith and TC2000. So FISV, I think, has really good fundamentals. Let me check that quickly. But I do believe it has earnings next week. So it's number 114, so it's top 200, which is pretty good. Didn't have great earnings growth last quarter, but really good sales. And let's actually freeze the top bar so we can always kind of see what the column actually is. So FISV. There we go. Not great earnings. Good sales last quarter. Really good growth. It's on the IBD 50 list, and pretty good after-tax margins. So we'll keep a look at this. So IRMD. This isn't really the pattern that I look for. It is in a nice uptrend, but it's kind of volatile at this point. It's kind of a volatility contraction pattern actually at this time. So actually we'll keep this on our list. Okay, Lilly is falling back to its 30-day moving average. Some big spikes recently. Let's see, when was this last? Right here. Let's go to monthly. And let's find the green line. So it's at 109. Okay. So it found support at its last green line, and now it's kind of forming a saucer pattern right here. I don't think I'll have it on my radar at this time. So EPAM does have earnings on 2/20, which will be this Thursday, but I do want to keep it on my list. Yep, Tesla. If you guys haven't watched my analysis of Tesla, I made an entire video kind of analyzing this big run that it had, and then it went on a further 80% after that. So it's really tough to deal with these really big increases because there's not that many good entry points. And Tesla, I think it's a little bit more too volatile for me, but it is kind of forming a nice consolidation right here and tightening up on this right-hand side. And it's still showing signs of accumulation. So even though it's 800 and you might think it's expensive, you shouldn't really think that way. You should think about the trend that's in and the accumulation patterns. And yeah, in my last video, in my stock market recap video or outlook video, I actually looked at its numbers, and let's actually do that one more time. Tesla. And I want to look at its Market Smith's being very slow for some reason. It's the Wi-Fi. Okay. Yeah, so what I really like about Tesla is it's having a huge breakout year in terms of earnings. So in its entire history, it's never really been this profitable before. And it's jumping up from 2 cents a share in 2019 to $8 a share in 2020. And its estimates are $15 a share in 2021. So I don't think its run is over. I'm not going to jump in at this time, but it is tightening up very nicely. And the RS rating is fantastic. So yeah. ARVN, I like this pattern. It's a recent IPO. It's right near all-time highs. And I'll put a line right here, which is the recent resistance. And we'll set an alert right here. Resistance breakout. So if it crosses this line, I'll get a text alert and also an email, which is pretty cool. It's a great system that TC2000 has. And you can set, I think, as many alerts as you want. So yeah, there we go. All right. So AXE is not near all-time highs. It's getting there. It's tightening up nicely. It's a little too tight for me, and it looks like the volume is really dropping off. So this is actually interesting. So you see a lot of big spikes in volume here. So I actually will have this on my radar because the volatility is really contracting. So let's keep that on our radar. TFX. Looks good. We'll set another alert right at 390. So all my alerts. Yeah. So it's kind of repetitive at this point. So we'll actually move on to kind of the next step of my process. But yeah, once I have all these flag stocks, what I do is I then copy them to the watch list that I've created, which is over here, 216. There we go. So now that I've got them in here, what I would do is I'll go through one by one and check their fundamentals either against my database or against MarketSmith itself. So let's actually use MarketSmith. So the first one is Paycom. So the first one is Paycom. And first I look at the right hand side, see how it's doing recently. You can see it's fell back to the pivot that it was in since this flat base here. And I really like how MarketSmith draws in all these patterns automatically. If you haven't had a chance yet, you should at least take the free trial or very low cost trial that they offer for MarketSmith. I think it's a great tool and I use it pretty much every day. So yeah, it's fell back to its pivot and now is moving up nicely. And I really like the earnings growth, very solid growth past four quarters. Good ratings except for the accumulation distribution rating, which lags a little bit. And I don't like that the estimate revisions are down, but you still have good expected growth for 2020 and 2021. So yeah, this is good fundamentals, so I'll keep it on my list. So next we got IRMD. So really good earnings growth the past few quarters. The estimates are down for this year, but they're up for next year. EPS rating's in 87. I'd like to see that a little bit higher, but Group RS is great. SMR rating is great. Accumulation distribution is good. Yeah, I like what I'm seeing here. We'll see if it actually works out of this volatility contraction pattern. It's still right near the pivot of this short-term kind of cup with handle pattern. So yeah, this is one to watch. So EPAM, let's type that in. Decent earnings growth. It is slowing a little bit, so I don't like to see that. But we've got decent fundamentals here, and estimates are up, which is good to see. So this looks good. FISV. See that? You can see the estimates are up for this year, but down for 2021. The earnings were down last quarter, but you still have that triple-digit sales growth, which is great. Yeah, this is pretty good. Let's look at AXE. So earnings last quarter was pretty good. The estimates are up 7% for this quarter, for this year, and 4% for 2021, which is good. It's really interesting how low the volatility is in this. I'm wondering if this was there was a merger or something for this. So SM asked, did I publish my full process, set of my trading rules in a document? I think I have, and my plan is to actually do a series where I go through each section of my trading rules, explain my methodology. So I will be starting that probably next week. First going through the market direction and how I take that into account in my trading. But if I find that link to my trading rules, I will post that on Twitter. So make sure you're following me, and I'll be posting that today or tomorrow. So this will be staying on our watch list. MANT. Yeah, no problem. So decent earnings growth. Not the greatest SMR rating, but it looks pretty decent. So all those stocks were pretty good. So what I would do now is I'll go back to this overall document, undo the scan, remove all these symbols, and then I'll paste the top 50 from my list and check out all their charts individually, look for buy points, because these are the stocks that have very, very good growth numbers, and I want to focus my investing in these stocks. Yeah, Guest Gamer, I'm a senior at the University of Maryland, and I'm majoring in mechanical engineering, actually. So not really related to investing, but this is a side passion of mine, and I really enjoy it. So again, we'll sort by the stochastic, and we'll go through each one of these and look for buy points and if the stock is near one of those. So team looks good. I've been eyeing this for a while. It's really consolidating right here. Good spike upward on Friday the 24th. EBS doesn't look too great because it's below this right here. Adobe has just been doing fantastic since this breakout here. I did miss this one, but this is a great stock, up 20%. Fantastic. Let's go to the high, 215.36, 217.31. So you can see LHX just had a green line breakout on the 17th, and since then it's been doing pretty well. So CI, it looks like it's hitting resistance pretty soon. So let's draw in this green line. $227.13. Yeah, of course, Jesse. I'll do that in just a second. So you can see CI is right at the green line. And I will be watching this because if it breaks through on above average volume, that's a buy signal for me. So Jesse, you want to take a look at in mode. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to hide all my drawings from the previous analysis video that I've done on this. So some people have said this is kind of a cup and handle pattern. I didn't really see that. It seems kind of messy for me. I picture it more as intermediate resistance levels right here. And that's just going to bring out all my drawings. But anyway, I wouldn't invest in mode at this time. It's not really moving upward. I don't think it's a yellow band stock at this point. So essentially look at the weekly chart. And yeah, it's right at its 10-week line here, and actually hasn't formed its 30-week. So right now its direction is sideways. It's not really in an uptrend. I thought it was going to move upward after it kind of broke this downward trend line here, but it's still just moving sideways. I think it's waiting for its earnings report on 2/18. So that will be on Tuesday. And after that happens, I think it could move up dramatically because its fundamentals are so strong. The estimates for this quarter is, I think, 3,900% increase. So a good company to keep an eye on. But right now, it's not viable for me just because it's so close to the earnings report, and also the chart doesn't look great at this time. So let's get back to it. PJT is climbing this right-hand side. It's not viable yet for me. It's not close enough to this top. Dynatrace, a really good IPO. It's kind of extended at this time. Yeah, no problem, Jesse. GPN, nice overall chart pattern. Just been increasing since 01, which is good to see. And yeah, it's kind of just kind of floating upwards here. Looks like a strong yellow band stock. It's actually been a yellow band stock since it looks like November, which is strong. So we'll keep an eye on that one. Let's go back to the daily. So Guest Gamer, your question is, my method seems flawed. Why wouldn't you buy when the stock is low and then sell higher? So my method is based on buying stocks at new all-time highs. And I want to buy then on the breakouts, and I will want to sell higher, but I want to buy a stock that doesn't have overhead supply holding it back. So here, the stock IPO'd here, and all through here, people are losing money as they're holding the shares. And then when the stock goes back up again, it has to fight that resistance as people sell as they get close to break even. So I want to buy when a stock is able to break through that resistance because it's such a company with such great fundamentals or a great CEO, a great product. And just because a stock is at all-time highs doesn't mean it can't go much, much higher. So a green line represents a new all-time high that isn't broken in 3 months. Apple has broken through like 10 of those. Microsoft similarly. So the best companies are trading at all-time highs. That's just a fact. And if a stock is rising up here, that's a risky investment in my mind because of all that overhead supply. So this is just my method. You can be an expert at buying stocks that are low. I'm just kind of sharing my perspective and why I buy stocks at all-time highs. So now look is consolidating nicely here. 355.99. PJT looks good. Oh, it's not quite at all-time highs. So I will buy a stock if it's close to all-time highs, but it has to be within 25%, if that makes sense. Because otherwise, I think there's just too much supply holding the stock back and keeping it down. And I definitely don't want to buy a stock that's in an overall downtrend and short-term downtrend. I always want to be trading with the overall trend and the short-term trend. So BL had a nice breakout on Friday, and you can see these nice accumulation spikes here. So we'll keep an eye on that. It is extended at this time, but you can see it fell right back to the pivot. So I will be watching this next week. And guess gamer, I'll actually give one more example. Let's take a look at Tesla's chart. Let's look at a weekly. So if you only bought Tesla when it was breaking through all-time highs, you would have done extraordinarily well with this stock. You would have bought it right here. You would have bought it when it went through its green line here, and it's up 100%. I would not buy it when it's in this period right here where it's in a downtrend, because you don't know when this downtrend is going to stop. It could go all the way to 100. So I want to buy a stock when the price is moving up on a weekly chart and a daily chart and intraday when I'm actually placing the buy order. Okay, light looks interesting. Let's look at the daily. It looks like it's falling back to the pivot point, which could be a bounce off the breakout. So we'll take a look at that. This is in a downtrend. Let's get this volume back here. So FLGT is extended right at this point, and we're actually past the 80 mark. So I wouldn't really invest in stocks that are over the 80 stochastic level because they're usually already broken out and kind of past the buy point at that time. So once I have all those stocks, I'll do the same thing. I'll take my flag ones, copy to that watch list. And then this kind of forms the basis for my weekly watch list. And I will go through one more time, check all their different fundamentals. And then if I have more than 15, I want to narrow that down even more. So how I do that is based on the stochastic or based on the kind of volume pattern. So I want to see big up spikes, and on down days or during consolidation periods, I want to see less volume and a constriction in the pattern. These are all signs of accumulation by mutual funds. So that is pretty much my process. Does anybody have any questions about kind of what I went over, or on any different stocks that you'd like me to talk about just for a second? All right, so binds, no problem. All right, so it's back over its 30 and 50 day, but it still could be below its 200-day moving average. So let's actually add that here. So a moving average. So I don't see it for some reason. That's kind of weird. Let's edit this. Oh yeah, because it hasn't gone 200 days yet. So let's see. Let's make this 150. All right, it hasn't gone that far. But basically, I want to see it approach all-time highs a little bit more. It's almost 50% down since its highest level in August. So it's doing well recently. It's consolidating this move. I like all these big volume spikes here on the up days, and kind of this decreasing volume pattern here. It does have a ways to go, and probably a lot of people bought it right here, and they're waiting to sell. So that's that overhead supply that I'm talking about. So if this is your type of trade, then go for it. Let's take a look at the fundamentals of Beyond Meat. So it's number 243, so it's in that top 400. Doesn't really have earnings recently. The sales are up 250%. I really like seeing that. The return equity is it's not making money at this time. The industry group is almost at the bottom, which you don't like to see. So overall, the only really good fundamental that I see is that sales growth. But again, if this is your type of trade, go for it. Oh, Jesse, that's really nice. That's really nice to hear. Thank you. Appreciate you coming out to the stream. ACIW. All right. So let's look at the monthly charts. So this is near all-time highs. I really like seeing that. Let's remove the 150 day. I like seeing that. That means there's less overhead supply holding it back. It's below its 50 day right now, which I would want to see it go up above that again, and it's 30 day. But overall, this looks okay. What I don't like seeing is on these down days, you have larger volume than on the up days. I would want it to be the inverse of this. So I don't think I would invest in this. Let's take a look at the fundamentals. It's number 246, which is pretty good. Really good EPS change last quarter and excuse me, and 1 quarter ago. The EPS surprise was 38, which you definitely like seeing that. Return on equity is okay at 14. Margins are decent. Sales increased last quarter for 45%. So yeah, this could be one to watch. The fundamentals are pretty good. I do want to see the chart pattern kind of shape up a little bit. So RDFN, let's see. So Redfin. So yeah, this broke out on Thursday, it looks like, on really big volume. So almost 10 million shares compared to 1 million shares traded, so 10 times the average volume. That's a sign that institutions are taking up a position after that earnings report. And you also had a nice follow-on day, which is good to see. For me, this is extended at this point, but I definitely think this could be one to watch and wait for it to consolidate a little bit and form and go through another intermediate kind of resistance level. So I'll definitely be watching this. Let's take a look at the fundamentals. So it's number 153. No real earnings growth there. EPS surprise was down, but they could have given better guidance for the days ahead. Sales up 88%, fantastic. Return on equity negative 23. Let's take a look at MarketSmith actually. RDFN. So there you go. Really good sales growth the past 2 quarters. I like the volume coming in here. The EPS rating is pretty bad at 56. Group RS rating is A-. That's good to see. SMR rating isn't great, but accumulation distribution rating, that's a measure of funds taking up new positions and increasing their stake. So that's an A+. That's excellent. So yeah, I think this is a good look. So ACIW was, and I linked this spreadsheet up in the chat so you can look at it for yourself. ACIW was 246. So I only really look at the top 400 based on fundamentals, and I really focus on the top 50, top 100. So what was the other one you wanted to look at? ELF. Okay, so constructive chart pattern. I don't like that's not really anywhere near all-time highs. But again, if this is your type of trade, it's showing good recent signs of accumulation. And looking at MarketSmith, after-tax margins are increasing. Not great EPS rating, SMR rating, group rating. So not the greatest fundamentals, but is in a cup pattern here. So if that's your type of trade, go for it. Yeah, no problem, Jody. Thanks for coming out. All right, that's pretty much it. Does anybody have any last minute stocks that they like my opinion on based on fundamentals and technicals? Okay, sure. Yeah, this was on my radar. So, yeah, definitely want to take a look at LK. Okay. Yeah, so it just bounced off its green line recently, which I'll actually take a look in MarketSmith or in TC2000 in just a second. But the sales growth is fantastic. I think probably since it's a Chinese company, it's hurting a little bit from the coronavirus, but the numbers look great. It doesn't really have a good EPS rating, but its sales is accelerating, which is great. And let's take a look. So yeah, I was watching it because it bounced off its previous all-time high, which is the green line here, on above average volume and recovered really nicely. So this is a potential entry right here. And then since then, it's just kind of been going sideways, kind of waiting for something to happen. So it should be reporting earnings soon, because obviously this isn't actually the next earnings report date. But I think it looks good. It's consolidating nicely. It's right at support at the 50-day and just a little bit under the 30-day moving average. And I think LK is a promising IPO, so definitely be on my radar. All right, Zscaler, that was good in early 2019. Yeah, similarly, it got knocked down a little bit. It's making a strong recovery, consolidating nicely. A potential buy point is when it crosses through this, so it's very close to this intermediate level of resistance. And I like that's a new company. It's a recent IPO, which means it has more room for growth. And take a look at the fundamentals. Really good earnings growth, really good earnings and sales growth. So promising company, ZS, definitely. Yeah. CPRX, let's take a look at that. So this looks like it ran up very quickly and now is being knocked down. Let's take a look in here. So going to the big picture, it's just kind of been going sideways since its IPO. Recently, it's still just kind of going sideways. On the weekly chart, it's still not much movement from here. So if you're looking for a growth name, I don't think this isn't what I would look for. But looking at its fundamentals, a really good earnings report last quarter, so that could be something. After-tax margins are increasing dramatically. But the most important thing is to look at what the chart's actually doing. Even if a company has great numbers, great earnings, sales, return on equity, the stock price isn't really going anywhere. So institutions aren't deciding to invest in this stock. So there's a reason it's only $4, and that's because people don't really want it. So it wouldn't be a stock that I would look to take up a position in. RH asked, do I do live streams on a regular schedule? So each weekend, I'm going to try to live stream on Sunday, kind of doing exactly what I'm doing here, answering questions, interacting with you guys live. So yeah, look for that each and every weekend, and I will post on Twitter whenever I'm going to do it. So if you follow me there, you'll be notified. All right, that's pretty much it from me. Thank you guys for coming out. I really appreciate it. We got one more question. How do I manage the trades I'm in, and how do you plan to take the trades on stocks in the watch list? So yeah, let's talk about that. So let's take so which had a recent level of resistance. So okay, so I've got a couple different entry points that based on my rules I'm allowed to take. For team, I want to watch it because it's really tightening up on this right hand side. This is exactly what I want to see. And so each and every day, what I'm going to do is in the morning around 11 a.m., I would watch for the volume and price increases. So if the price is up 4% and the volume buzz, which is basically a measure of the volume at that time compared to the average volume at that time, if that is up 25, 40, 100, 500%, that tells you a lot of people are interested in that stock and are trying to buy shares at that time. And that's when I want to be buying a position. So with SPCE, I saw when I bought it on Monday that the volume buzz was up 500%. And it finished the day on above average volume and broke through this area of resistance and followed on each and every day. So as I'm actually buying the order, I'm making sure the short-term trend is up, the long-term trend is up, and the intraday trend is up. And I want to see volume coming in on that last day. So that's how I would go about investing in one of these. And be careful for those that have earnings reports, EPAM, MANT, because you don't want to buy a stock right before earnings and then have it drop 15%. And how I'm going to manage these right here, I have stop losses in place for each of these stocks, so I'm protected in that way. And other than that, I would decide each and every day whether it's broken one of my sell rules, broken a key moving average, the 30-day, or just kind of fell back into the base, and I'll sell half a position if that's the case. Yeah, so that's pretty much how I go about investing in new stocks briefly, and how I'll manage my current holdings. A lot of these I have a decent rise from last week. So obviously, I have to be careful and have to manage them appropriately, but I've got a decent cushion in most of these names. Oh, that's really nice to hear, RH. Glad you're learning something. I'm still learning myself. I'm reading books. I'm listening to other experienced traders. I've had excellent teachers, so glad I can pass on a little bit of what I've a little bit of the knowledge that I've gained. So Guy asked, where do I place? Is that my stop loss? So it depends on the type of entry that I'm doing. If it's a Bollinger Band bounce, which is a bounce off the 15-2 Bollinger Bands, what I like to do is place the stop loss right at the Bollinger Band at that date. Because what I want to do is place that stop loss at a point that I predetermined means a breakdown of the pattern. So if stock bounces off the Bollinger Band and then falls right back through it, that's a sell signal because that's a breakdown of the pattern. But I also usually do a percentage stop loss of 3.5%, and that's for breakouts or other types of entries. Yeah, Guest Gamer, I talked about ZS and CPRX. You can scroll back in the timeline and watch that. So, Guy, probably the best way to do it is use prior supports or a moving average if that's your thing. There's so many different ways to place stop losses and set that value. What's important is that you know how much you're risking and you're never risking more than 1% of your entire portfolio. So that should determine either your position size or that percentage that you're allowed to lose on that trade. So Jesse, that's a very good question. My top 2 to 3 books. I actually have a video planned on that, but I'll cover them right now. So probably my top 2 are Mark Minervini's 2 books, Think and Trade Like a Champion and Trade Like a Stock Market Wizard. You can learn so much from these books, and I read them over and over, and I'm still picking up new things. And then my third pick is How I Made $2 Million in the Stock Market by Nicholas Darvis. He does a great kind of narrative in that book, kind of going through all the mistakes that he did at the beginning, and then the overall system that he developed after a while. So yeah, what is my top 2 holdings right now? Yeah, Guy, I know. Yeah, the other day's low. You can do that. There's so many different ways to set a stop loss. You just have to find what works for you and what works best for the setup that you're using. So Guest Gamer asks, what are my top 2 holdings right now? So SPCE, I sold half for 21% gain, and then I'm holding the rest, and I'm up about 40% in that. And other than that, right now, I think AMD is my best with a gain of 9%. But I cycle these around and take profits and invest in new positions. So I try to shoot for a 10% gain, and I try to make that my average gain. So I shoot for a little bit longer than that, 20% usually. But yeah, I hope that answered your question. And yeah, any other last minute questions before we end the stream? All right. Well, thank you guys all for showing up. And I'll see you guys next week. Have a great weekend.